Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Gooner Ramble. We come to you today fresh off the back of a pretty spectacular win, 2-0 against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, and after losing against the powerhouses of European football that are Dinamo Zagreb and Olympiacos, we had a bit more of a straightforward match today, in which we dispatched this small team from across the Rhine. I'm joined today by only one person keeping me company tonight, and that's Judd. How you doing, mate? You alright?
I'm spectacular, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm sure even though there's only two of us, we'll have plenty to talk about after, in all seriousness, what was a pretty spectacular result. The podcast I did at the weekend, I said I thought we'd lose, not because we were playing badly or I thought we would play badly, but because Bayern was so good. Before we get into the nitty gritty of it, what's your initial reaction? What was your reaction to the game? The final whistle, or even when we scored that second goal to wrap up the points. Were you in shock, or was this something that you thought we could do?
On their day, Arsenal's capable of beating anybody. But at the same time, I was like you, going into it. Bayern's coming off the back of 12
won every game this
competitive
season,
wins. Yeah, I really didn't think. I thought it was more they couldn't be beaten than we couldn't beat them, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Because we're a team that's capable of it, but they're just playing so well. I just didn't think that, it would take a combination of us having a great night and them having an off night, and, in a way that's kind of what happened, and, we were able to get the result in the end. So, yeah, I was kind of a little bit of shock just because of it actually did happen, but not because I didn't expect it.
It's one of these things, even though we've had some good results against Bayern in the past, even though obviously in the knockout ties we have gone out to them twice in recent years, it really was quite something, I think, especially given the way they were playing with Lewandowski on such good form. And, when I saw the teams and I saw that, Robben was out, Ribery was out, Goetze was out, and they still had that front three of Costa, Lewandowski and Müller, you just think, bloody hell, is this fair?
No, it's yeah.
But we can talk about the Bayern team, but we all know that they've got a squad as good as anyone's. Perhaps any Barcelona could say they edge them, and that's probably because they've got a certain Messi in their team. But let's talk about the Arsenal team. It was there was some speculation before the game that Wenger might mix it up a little bit, and Alexis and Özil might be rested, with priorities very much set on the Premier League going forward. Personally, I would have been very surprised if they had been dropped. But the team, I'm pretty certain, was the same 11 that started against Watford, if I'm not mistaken. What did you make of the lineup? Were you surprised at all with it, or did you think it was what you expected it to be?
Well, I kind of was listening to the media. You kind of expected it to be, the change squad for the Champions League because we were prioritizing the Premier League, but I don't think there was really any truth behind that, in reality, because we were in a tight spot, but we weren't eliminated yet, so it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense to just completely give up on that competition. I wasn't completely buying into it, but the more you hear the rumors, the more you start to believe them. So I thought there might be a couple changes, and if we left out a couple midfielders, we've got a little bit more depth there. But one thing I was really excited or happy to see was that Cech was finally put back into the team. And I never really understood the cup keepers are fine for the Capital One Cup or whatever they're calling it now, the League Cup, but Champions League, come on, man.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it seems to be a precedent that was set. Do you remember when Mourinho was at Madrid, and he rotated Casillas and Diego Lopez, and I think Casillas was playing Champions League games, and that seemed quite strange at the time to have a player playing one in the other. And then of course last season you had for Barcelona, Claudio Bravo was playing league games, and then Ter Stegen was playing in the Champions League. It was quite an odd dynamic, and but I guess the difference between those examples is that Ospina was clearly a level down from Cech. And I think Ospina officially was injured, wasn't he, after the international break? So we had Matt Macy on the bench. It's interesting.
I didn't actually hear that.
Well, Ospina definitely wasn't on the bench, and I'd heard that
I saw that.
He had received a knock, but whether or not that might have been the same sort of knock that Cech had against Olympiacos, the one that may or may not have actually existed. But I mean, so let's talk about that. You obviously Cech. I think a lot of people had him down as man of the match, but before we get into his performance, we'll comment on the Ospina conundrum. I mean, if Ospina was injured, or do you think that made Wenger's decision easy for him? And do you think he always was going to play Cech, or if Ospina is genuinely injured, do you think he had to take him out of the team because of his injury rather than selection, or do you think he was always going to go with Cech after what happened against Olympiacos?
Well, there's one thing I've learned in my years of following Arsenal, it's I have no idea what Arsene Wenger's ever thinking.
I think no one does. Say they do, but they don't.
So, I mean, I'd hate to speculate on what he would have done, but clearly Ospina being, out made the selection choice very simple. I mean, it picked itself, really. But, I would have hoped that he would have been making that change anyway. I still, like I said earlier, I just don't understand why you do that. But, and like you were saying, Ospina's clearly a step down. So he's, not the same level as Cech. So why do you not?
It's interesting, the whole debate, I think, because, I think Wenger, one of his biggest qualities, which a lot of his players, past and present, have spoken about, is his loyalty to his players. I think when you want to play for Arsene Wenger because you know that he will back you, he will support you, he'll put an arm around you. But also that can be to his detriment. Perhaps he was being far too loyal to Ospina, because I think in years gone by, Cech wouldn't have been bought in the summer. I think Ospina had a pretty good end to the season, and more often than not, Wenger has tended to go, well, he's been okay, so we'll stick with him. With goalkeepers, we've had long history since really Lehmann left of kind of keepers like Almunia and Szczesny and Fabianski. You've never quite been good enough, but Wenger's always stuck with them. And then, of course, in the summer, Cech becomes available in kind of very strange circumstances. He takes a chance. So I think part of it might have felt a bit like Ospina had been, Ospina didn't perhaps deserve to lose his place in the team. He didn't underperform necessarily. But a better option became available through pretty special circumstances. So we went for Cech, and maybe because of that, Wenger felt loyal to Ospina, and that's why he's given him these games. But
I could see that.
Yeah, it's possible. As I said, no one really knows what's going on through his head. No one really knows.
Right.
I think
it's a plausible explanation.
Exactly. I think he probably would have played Cech in the week, even if Ospina was fit. I think he could have justified it by saying that, he doesn't want to throw Ospina under the bus. I don't think he'd want to come out and say Ospina made a huge mistake in the last game. Cech's much better. We're going to play Cech. I don't think that's the way he would have gone about it. But anyway, look, I know you're a goalkeeping man yourself, Judd, and I know that you're probably dying to talk about Petr Cech after his performance last night. I mean, before we get into that, first of all, let's have a little look at since he's arrived. On the first day of the season, made those mistakes against West Ham. Some people were saying, have we just signed a Chelsea reject? Did Mourinho know that he was washed up and sold him to us knowing that he wasn't very good? But since then, you think he's got 6 clean sheets in the league, another clean sheet against Bayern now. I think he's just been brilliant. But in particular last night, what was it that impressed you the most about Cech?
Everything. I mean, the reaction saves that he had. I mean, he really did have a a complete match. I mean, it was like the first half was an exhibition goalkeeping by both keepers.
Oh,
I mean, those two of the best goalkeeping performances I've seen until what was it, like the 70th minute or whatever? The
79th minute, I think.
Yeah, 79th.
Missed the ball, but
yeah, but up to then, I mean, wow, both of them were just on unbelievable form, and and I think I said after, I can't remember which match it was during the league, that I didn't think that Cech was a case of damaged goods. I think it was more of a case that he just hadn't been played in so long, that he was just a little out of form.
As we saw last night, the best goalkeeper in the world has an off day. He makes mistakes. The way that he came for that ball and Neuer missed it was very reminiscent of what Cech did against West Ham. So I think looking back on that now, we can just say, look, this is the best, arguably one of the best goalies of all time. He's made a huge howler in this big game. Cech made a couple of mistakes in the first match. It happens. It always will happen. But the way he's responded from that, I mean, he's never seemed to doubt himself. He's always seemed so assured. And with the performance last night, often it's just the little things about Cech. It was like a couple of times, I remember Douglas Costa cut in and shot, and it was a low shot. I mean, he had a few shots Costa did, but there was one that was a low on the ground, it was kind of in between a few players, and Cech just kind of caught it. And I realised, I thought, well, I was never even worried about that. I just knew Cech would catch it. There was no, with Szczesny on Ospina, there was always that nervous, will he fumble it? Will he, I think he just does the basic things right to the point where everyone in front of him feels so much more confident in what they're doing. And in performances last night, we had to defend a lot. We had to keep our shape. Just Cech's influence was so much more than just saving shots. It was, he was really his experience told last night. And but of course, he made a couple of fantastic saves, especially from Lewandowski as well, didn't he? That we're just so vital. I mean, especially against the guy who's probably the best striker in Europe at the moment, apart from Giroud, of course.
Certainly, certainly the most on form.
Yeah.
Well, not after last night. Giroud's the most on form now.
No, I think we can all agree Cech was pretty special. So I guess before we talk about more individual performances, let's just talk about the first half as a whole. I mean, there's one thing I want to talk about which has annoyed me. You don't get BT Sport obviously over in the States, but we have here in the UK we have Owen Hargreaves who was commentating last night, and he's not the most annoying Owen that we have on BT Sport, but he kept saying every time that Bayern came at us and we kept our shape and didn't come out and leave gaps, he kept saying how we had to come out and stop Xabi Alonso from passing the ball, and I kind of thought, hold on for a minute. We've not.
I actually was watching the BT Sport stream last night.
You did see it. I said at the time, why does he keep saying this? We've kept our shape. We're not allowing them any space. As soon as you come out, you give them the space to hurt you. I mean, what did you make of our whole? And so this I want to bring that point up, but also that obviously leads us into our overall game plan.
Right.
It was clear that we weren't going to come out of the blocks like we did against Manchester United. I think we had a lot more respect for Bayern. I think against Man United, we knew that we could catch them off guard, and we were good enough to hurt them. Whereas with Bayern, we had to be a lot more methodical with our approach. So what did you make of the setup? Because it seemed to me that we struck a really great balance of keeping it really tight at the back, but also on the counter, we were always looking for Theo, Alexis. It just looked like we were doing everything we should be doing. I mean, what did you make of it as a whole, the approach?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for me is the difference between Manchester United's that approach and then the Bayern approach. I mean, we can finally put the rest of the debate that Wenger doesn't change his tactics, doesn't change his approach based on the opponent. I mean, that was clear as night and day.
Because this seems to go back to what happened at City in January when we defended well, and it did feel a little bit like that because although and again, even in that City game, we didn't really allow them to have too many chances. And I don't think Bayern really had that many. I mean, they created a couple of really good ones which Cech had to save, but for the most part, they were kind of shooting
did we, though.
long. Exactly. And that was what I thought we did against City as well. It wasn't one of these where you just defend the whole game and then just hope for something on the break. We always had that intent to counter-attack. And you mentioned, of course,
and it was a control the counterattack. It wasn't just hoofing the ball up the field.
Well, exactly, and it's in these positions when you've got Cazorla in that deep lying role that really is when he can excel. Yes, I mean, what did you make of the first half performance as a whole? That was our approach. I mean, did you think some people were very worried about the number of passes they had against us, or that we weren't keeping our pass completion rate wasn't too high? Did that worry you at all at the time, or did you think it was all going to plan at that point at half time?
I didn't like the way that it was playing out, but I liked the fact that we got to halftime and it was still 0-0. And honestly, I think they had one. I remember the one great save that Cech had in the first half, and I don't remember too many other good chances they had in the first half. So they had I don't know, 300,
there was a couple of
400 passes. In the first half, and they created, just a couple decent chances. If they're going to pass the ball around at the midfield and defense, fine. Go ahead, let them. And they didn't really have any incisive passes through our defense because we were playing back. We were, letting them have the ball out at midfield, and then, we created a great chance for Ozil. I think that was in the 17th, 20th minute, somewhere around there. And
his right foot.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a spectacular save from Neuer. I mean, it wasn't as good as the one that he had against Walcott, but, that was going in. That was just inside that back post. And, he got down low and just enough to parry it wide. And and then the Walcott chance.
Well, let's talk about the Walcott chance, because my initial reaction was, first of all, what a goal was my first reaction. Then when I realised the ball hadn't hit the net, was, what a fucking save. And then on a couple of rewatch reaches, I kind of thought, Theo should be scoring that, and it can be simultaneously be a great save and a pretty bad miss, can't it?
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure that when Theo looks back upon it, I'm sure he just put the ball in the, he's thinking put it on the net, and there's no chance he's going to get to it. In hindsight, he's going to go back and look at it and go, man, why didn't I just put that a little bit towards the back post? It would have been so easy to do that, and it would have had no chance.
I feel like with Theo, because he's so unconfident in the air, his reaction was...
Well, that wasn't even really in the air, was it? I mean, it was...
Well, put it this way. He didn't want to shank it over the bar, shank it back the way it came. He thought, if I just turned my head...
But it was a square, straight-on header right on the middle of the net. Exactly what he was probably trying to do.
I think the point I would make is that if that was Lewandowski at the other end, or if that was Giroud even, who was more confident in the air, there's no doubt it's a goal. He heads it either higher into the net or into the corner where Neuer doesn't even have a chance. And to be fair to Theo, 99% of goalkeepers don't get that. They don't react quick enough. No. But of course, we were up against.
Or have a strong enough hand to keep that out, because that header had plenty of pace on it too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what's tough, isn't it? So, So do you think can you let Theo off for that? Do you think? I mean, speaking of Theo, I mean, what did you make of his performance as a whole? Of course, we were using him as the outlet. You were pleased with it, because he hasn't scored for a couple of games now.
You know what? I mean. That doesn't really worry me as much, especially when we've got other players like Sanchez on the form that they're on. The things that he brings to a match because of his speed and athleticism make a bigger difference, even if he doesn't score, than having Giroud on there. I mean, they're just so different, and people just try to compare the two as, like they're comparing apples to apples, but it's not, And last night was a great example of that. How many times was Theo making great runs down the flank or in behind their defense? And then
he was an outlet, wasn't he? I mean, and that was the thing.
Giroud comes on, and we're playing we're playing back deep because after we got that goal, I think he came on right before that free kick, didn't he? Yeah. Yeah,
he was only on for a few minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he, and he's that target man, and he's holding up play for people to come on to. Yeah.
I think what we saw with both Theo and Giroud is they can both be target mans, they can both be outlets, but in very different ways. And in the first half,
exactly,
or when the first hour when Walcott was on, when we were trying to score, with his pace and Bayern playing quite high, as soon as he got the ball, he can run at them, he can get in behind. There's always that attacking outlet. Whereas in the second half, when we had the lead, what Giroud can do is you can hoof the ball long. If you're getting under pressure, you can clear it to him, and you can control it, he can hold it up, and he can slow the game down, which is obviously not what you want when you're trying to win the game. But when you've already got the lead, it was hugely beneficial. And he seemed obviously he got his goal early on after coming on. Brilliantly taken, if you ask me. Do you know what? It was funny. When I saw the replay, I thought he's actually punched the ball in. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But to his credit, it kind of came on. He kind of kissed it into the net, which is the most Giroud thing ever.
Yeah. I'm still not convinced that it even hit his arm. It's hard to say.
Gary Lineker kept saying that on BT Sport. He said it did hit his arm. I was like, no, it didn't.
It's
the first time I thought the same. And then you watch the replay, see that it hit his face.
Clearly hit his face. Yeah.
The rotation of the ball didn't seem to change. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It hit his face.
It was a cheeky goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, but you could see after he got his goal, I've scored against Bayern Munich. After that, he's playing with that sort of thing. That is always fun to watch Giroud when he's got his back up. And there's one bit where he was up against Jerome Boateng. He's one of the most physically imposing defenders in Europe, and he kind of controlled the ball with the outside of his left foot. And then the crowd went, "Way!" And he ended up winning a foul and stuff. And really, I thought even without the goal, Giroud's performance was really fantastic, and it was just what we needed at a point where we needed someone to hold the ball up, to keep the ball away from our goal for some time. And it's just. I guess after when he had a bit of a tough patch about a month ago, it's really good to see him back and playing with a bit of that Gallic flair we love so much. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think this can? I mean, everyone's always said, Giroud's been everyone said the last few weeks that he's a great super sub. Do you think that does him a disservice, or do you think that's going to be his role moving forward, and Theo will be the number one undisputedly for weeks, or is there potential for mixing up a little bit?
For me, I think it's going to be mixed up a bit. I think it's going to have a lot to do with the type of approach we're taking into the match,
especially with Ramsey out, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Theo
that's true. Right. I haven't heard any news as to the extent
of
the injury.
Wenger said it's not long. Good. And hamstring injuries are never quick, are they? So I think at least a month.
Yeah, you never know.
But we don't know.
it depends on what approach we're going to take, and last night was a good example of why it's great to have two such different strikers in the squad, because you can even change your approach midway through a match. And,
it's good game management from you can say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, with him a number of attacking players, we have that injured at the moment. He hasn't got a huge amount of options from the bench.
Right.
But I think the decision to start Walcott and then bring on Giroud was played perfectly, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that'll probably be the approach that we go into for the next couple of weeks at least. It was nice to see Giroud get a goal, and it couldn't have come against a better opponent. And but I still don't know how much that's going to really help his confidence. You need to get a couple.
Well, it's Bayern Munich, isn't it? So it will help us a bit. And I think
and at home, in front of the home fans, is good.
Exactly. The thing I've always said about Giroud, when a couple of seasons ago when he was really good at the beginning, and then he kind of dropped off towards the end, was that he had to play an incredible number of games that season. When he had Bentner as his only real, Bentner and Sonogo, bloody hell, were the only two players that I know, that's just a long time ago, isn't it? They were the only two alternatives to him, so he played every match, and he was knackered. And when he's knackered, he just plays terribly. He really is one of these players that when he's tired, you can tell. The ball bounces off him, he can't control it, he misses easy chances. But when he's fresh and he's got his tail up, I think he's good, and he's taken his chances so well the last few weeks. It's really pleasing. But anyway, look, we focus on Giroud a little bit more. Let's before we go into more individual performances, let's talk about the final goal. It got to the point where I think it was looking like we were going to be backs against the wall to the very end, and then out of nowhere, Hector Bellerin, who you would think had just come off the bench himself, nicks the ball from this crazy run, absolutely skins Alaba, hits a great pass to Özil, who just managed to squeeze it over the line. It was a really odd moment because there seemed to be no realization it had been a goal for about 20 seconds. But
and then everybody thought that was the final whistle and not a goal.
I know. I mean, yeah, exactly. It was very odd. But Hector Bellerin, man, I mean,
oh wow,
what a guy! Yeah. And Özil as well, who finished it well, and I thought had a pretty good game. I mean, what did you make of that goal? And Bellerin,
the effort and energy out of Bellerin was just phenomenal. And Alaba's, He's no
slouch. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely no slouch. And and then the speed that he still had and the fuel that he still had in the tank that late in the match, wow, that was brilliant. I'm kind of concerned he was that far up the pitch that late, but hey, whatever. It worked out this time. So
it's funny. It was in the Guardian's match report I read earlier today. And it's mentioned something in their minute by minute, and they mentioned that moment, and they said, 92nd minute, Arsenal's right back gets the ball high up the pitch. What does he do with it? Run it into the corner? No, he plays for Arsenal, so of course he ran to the box, beat a man, and crossed it for.
That's so Arsenal, isn't it? Though,
which is just, but which we bemoan, but there is something about that. There's such a joy in watching Bellerin this season, and
absolutely.
That kind of, and everyone, people are saying we play him on the wing, but I think he's an underrated defender.
No.
But
he's solid back there in the defense.
And he had a few dodgy moments against Douglas Costa, but I think any fullback in the world, unless you're Nacho Monreal, by the way, if he was on the other side, wouldn't have had a problem with him. We'll get on to him in a minute.
And,
but Bellerin,
I can't say that I've watched a ton of the Bundesliga, but from every news that I've heard, has all been saying that Costa's been one of the top 5 players in the league this year.
The thing with Costa is that because of his style of play, you don't have to watch many of the matches to see.
You see the highlights.
You see the goals, you see the skills, and you think, guys, this is a proper winger. A winger who's quick, speedy, will take you on, and has a bag of tricks. There was one trick he did he skinned Bellerin with.
I saw it in the halftime.
I thought, do you know what, Bellerin, don't worry, mate, because I realised the ball, by the time he crossed it in, I thought, what's he done there? It was really quite something.
Yeah.
But Bellerin, he's growing into such a fantastic player, and these big games,
21.
Was it last? Yeah, he's only about 21, which makes me quite depressed because I'm 23. But what am I doing with my life?
Start.
One after your age, but
a few.
Think back to last season. Bellerin made his first appearance for us in that first game against Dortmund, away from home. We were dreadful. He had a tough time. We lost 2-0.
Didn't he? Yeah.
So a year and a bit on. And he puts in a performance like that against Bayern Munich. I mean,
it really didn't even take him that long. It was just a few weeks later he was looking pretty solid after coming off.
Well, but I think these last few weeks in particular, he's really.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So much more.
But
he looks so. suited
even
for
the
this
end
team.
of last season, he seemed to turn around from that performance. Because I can't remember who it was that he was marking that match for Dortmund. I'm drawing a blank. I'm horrible with names.
I don't know. I can't
But
remember.
he was just getting skint all night. I just remember like at least a half dozen times.
Really
he was just
exposed,
left
though, I
in
think.
his dust. Oh
It
yeah.
was a shite night for us, I have to say, all round.
No. And
Pretty dreadful.
yeah, and then him in particular. But yeah, and then he turned it around in the end of last year. He was doing phenomenally, and this year, yeah, especially.
Well, speaking about his the guy on the other side of the pitch for us in defence, Nacho Monreal. I mean, at what point do we just say this guy is world class? I mean, how many better left backs are there? Again, I don't watch an awful lot of European football, but the way he nullified Muller and the way he's been playing at that level for so long really it does astound me, especially when you think of, when he first arrived, he wasn't particularly good. He was very iffy. He looked like he had a few dodgy games, never really take over from Gibbs. And then really, for some time now, he's just been unbelievable. And I really think he is the perfect fullback. He's so good. He's good going forward. For Theo's header that he should have scored, that was from a Monreal cross, and he's got a good history of that. He's so sturdy defensively. I can't remember the last time a winger had a good day against him. He just seems to nullify them so well. And he gives us that outlook going forward and is solid at the back. I mean, what more can you ask from a fullback?
Nothing. I don't know if you guys have an expression for this like we do over here, but guys like that, we call them, the blue collar lunch pail workers that just go out there, do their job, and then go home. And
we probably wouldn't call it that, but yeah, I know. What you mean. Just the guy.
You know what I'm saying?
Hero. Yeah.
Yeah, he just goes out there, does the business, and goes home. He doesn't need the accolades. He doesn't use a lot of flash. He just goes out there and gets the job done. And that's what you need, especially from a left back. Defenders. That's the same thing with Coquelin, defensive midfielders, the unsung heroes. Those guys, have such a huge impact on the game in general.
But even with the Coquelin, I think because so many people wanted a defensive midfielder, when we've actually got one, people have been waiting for it for so long. But with Monreal, I don't think we need a great left back. There was always an exception that we had decent left backs, and it wasn't the most immediate area that needed improving. But ever since we've had Monreal, you think, God, when he leaves, how are we going to replace him? He's just brilliant. We can talk about his game last night, but really it was like every game he's had for so long. But Thomas Muller was, aside from that one pass he played through to Costa that Cech saved from, Muller was pretty quiet. Yeah. And I think a lot of that was down to Monreal. And, big shout out to Koscielny and Mertesacker as well, especially Mertesacker, I thought was, again, those kind of games where a back against the wall and he's really solid defensively. He just looks so comfortable when he's not obviously exposed to leaving huge gaps behind him. He was really good. So, I mean,
for his mates.
It really was. When I was thinking about player ratings last night, I think you wouldn't give anyone less than a 7 or an 8. There wasn't a bad performance in there.
Certainly not in the defense in the first.
No, I mean the defense.
Team.
I would. Yeah, I mean Monreal and Bellerin were particularly brilliant. Cech was brilliant, and the centre halves were solid as anything. So,
yeah.
I mean, is there anything else in particular you want to comment on the game itself? I mean, anything you picked up or noticed about it you'd like to talk about, or you're pretty happy?
I like the fact that we can. Honestly, I think we can finally put to rest the fact that Wenger does indeed prepare for matches. I mean, last night had to be the shining example of that. We were happy to let them have the ball. We were happy to sit back, in our final third and just wait for our opportunities. And then, we were actually clinical last night. Well, it could have been better, but we took advantage of enough, and we didn't give them much. And that's what you need, especially in Europe. Especially when you start getting to the knockout stages. And for me, the only worrying thing is, we still have to play everybody else in the group once more, and we're what is it? Zagreb and Olympiacos are both on 6 now.
So we've got so ourselves and Zagreb are on 3 behind Olympiacos.
Okay, Zagreb. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I think what we want for the next game is for Zagreb to beat Olympiacos, so they're both on 6.
Right.
Because what happens if Olympiacos win? They're on 9, and let's presume that we lose to Bayern in the second game. We then have to go and beat Olympiacos and Zagreb, and hope that Bayern beat both of them in the other game. So I think the ideal result would have been draws from both games, but obviously Olympiacos scored. But I think it was in Zagreb, wasn't it? So it'll be at home the next game for Olympiacos. So, it's interesting actually, isn't it? After you do have this kind of little feeling that, why were we so unbelievably shite in those first 2 matches? Because we've got this great result, and we're only, we're not dead and buried, but we've still got a lot to do. I mean, really.
That's Arsenal, though, isn't it?
We've got to win. We have to. Yeah, I mean, you're right. We have to win 2 out of those 3 games, at least.
Yeah.
A draw against Bayern, I think, puts things pretty firmly in our camp, as in we can. Yeah. Again, presuming Olympiacos don't go and beat Bayern or anything, we should be able to. We're in a position, hopefully, where we can go to Greece, and if we win, then we'll go through. But
one thing I said at the beginning after the draw was, I think I might have tweeted it. Our results in Greece have not been good recently.
Well, yeah, no.
I think we're winless in our last 3 trips out there, aren't we?
I'm pretty sure. I remember there was one game, I think 2-3 years ago, where we'd already won the group. We'd already qualified.
Right.
And we ended up sending Scalacci and whatnot to go and play, and we lost 2-1 or something. So it's one of Olympiacos hadn't won in England for 12 games or something, and they went and beat us.
Right,
so,
yeah. I mean, the past is the past, and a lot of times it's squads that aren't even in existence anymore. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you offered me, you said to me, look, if we go to the last game needing 3 points to go through, would you take it? I'd say yes. I think we should back ourselves.
Point,
and if we can't beat Olympiacos in either game, then we deserve to go out, frankly.
I won't argue with that.
But, so qualification obviously still not, there's a long way to go for that. What do you think the result as a whole means for our season? We beat United 3-0. I mean, you look over the last few weeks, Olympiacos aside, we beat Spurs 2-1 in their own backyard with those 2 Flamini goals. They still make me laugh when I think about it. We beat the form team in the league, Leicester 5-2, in a pretty great display. Smashed United 3-0. Beat Watford 3-0 in a very assured way. And then I've just beaten Bayern 2-0. Do you get the impression that we're building something here in terms of are we going to go on one of these runs that we have that last 2 or 3 months, or do you think that even with Everton at home this weekend the wheels could come off? Or do you think we're
not thinking the wheels could come off?
Okay, that's probably a bit too emotive a term. But do you think this is going to be, leading up to Christmas, for example, we're going to go top of the league, we're going to like we did in 2 seasons ago, or do you think it's going to be kind of ups and downs for the next few months?
It's hard to say. I think if nothing else, this run certainly gives our squad some validation and some belief that we are capable of anything right now.
Mm.
So that's certainly a good thing, and is one of the prerequisites to having a great run for a couple months. If I were betting on it, I would say right now that I would put us as favorites to do something like that, because nobody else in the league has really been as consistent recently as we have been. So, I'd say first by January certainly isn't out of the question.
Well, it's interesting what the fixtures we've got coming up. I mean, actually, the next 3 fixtures we've got are pretty tough. I think Everton at home, Sheffield Wednesday in the Cup, we'll ignore that. Swansea away, Bayern away, again ignoring that, but in the league, sorry.
Right.
I think as we go into the Bayern game now with a bit of pressure off, obviously we need to try and get something from that game, but the win has, we've kind of dragged ourselves out a bit of a hole there. So we've got Everton in the league, then Swansea in the league, and Tottenham at home.
Yeah. Yep.
Now those 3 games are pretty tough, but the 3 we've just had, Leicester away, United at home, Watford away, seems like a tougher run, those 3. So, if we keep this form up, we then go into games against Norwich away, Sunderland at home, Villa away, and we had West Brom away, then Norwich away, then Sunderland, then Villa, then we have City, which is right before Christmas. But the next 7 games, even though there's some tough ones, obviously with Tottenham and then Swansea away as well. There's 7 games there that you think, well, if we can beat United, if we can beat Watford, if we can beat Leicester, we should be going into these games prior to the City match, thinking we can really. There's 21 points on the line there. Get 18 points, or even more, potentially.
And then not to go back to a sour point, the only bad result we've had recently was the 2-0 to Chelsea, which was a total bag of,
Well, the Chelsea game I just find hard to analyse because the game was on a knife edge.
Right,
and
it was completely taken away.
Diego Costa happened, so I don't want to say we didn't deserve to lose, but I think the game.
At the same time, it took the competition right out of it.
Well, it did. We were screwed,
Yeah.
which is a real shame. But no, I mean it's interesting seeing what's going to happen next. But
We recovered very well from that too.
Oh yeah, I think people often. I know you think about losing to West Ham on the first day. You know, no striker brought in. People were agitated to say the least.
But that's always the case, though, isn't it? I mean, we always overreact.
There was. I remember
the window closes and everybody freaks out. And...
Well, you know, whilst I agree with that people do overreact, when we lost to Chelsea on the Saturday, that Saturday early kickoff, if City had won that evening, they would have gone 8 points clear.
Yeah, and
they lost to West. They lost to West Ham. They lost to Spurs the week after. We won, and now we're 2 points behind. And they've got the Manchester Derby at the weekend. So if we can beat Everton on the Saturday night, well, we can go ahead of them, and then they've got to play. You know, so it really is an interesting league fight, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, one thing I wanted to say actually, I said this kind of briefly the other day, but it pales more into context now that we've also beaten Bayern Munich. Was that I said actually that the Watford game, the way we went about that, kind of pleased me more than the United match. Obviously, the United match was so much more satisfying, but we've seen, I think, over the last few months that we can raise our game in big matches. We beat City away, we smashed Liverpool at home, and last season obviously beat United very recently. But with Watford, but I think that with the United and Bayerns of this world, those games are kind of one-offs. You know, they're special. And we raise a game for some, we don't for others. The game we had against Watford is going to be what 80% of our games are like this season, against so-called inferior opposition who will want to keep things tight, and we've got to be patient to break them down, and that's what we did. So if you look up the fixtures got coming up, so we've got Everton the weekend. Everton obviously do like to play the ball, but they will want to keep it tight. Swansea again, another possession team, but they want to keep it tight. Tottenham, when they came to the Emirates last season, they played really defensively, which is quite surprising for a Tottenham team. And then, West Brom, Norwich, Villa, Sunderland, these teams will all try and keep it tight, frustrate us, in the way that we did with Bayern. So the way we went about beating Watford, which is a very methodical, patient approach, which is also how we played against Bayern in a very different way. But there was something about that game that just filled me with a lot of confidence, the way that we did, very professional, and we let our quality show, and that's what I hope we'll do.
You were patient.
In coming weeks. We were patient, and we had to be, and it paid off. So, So look, I think we can. Is there anything else you want to speak about the Bayern game in particular? Do you think we've covered all bases? Are you happy with everything we've gone on? Is there
I'm
anything
happy
else we
with
can
everything. I don't know if we covered everything, but
we've praised Giroud, we've praised Cech, praised the defence. We've praised the manager. I think it was just one of those nights that. One thing we could speak about as well is the protest from the Bayern fans, which was well received by the Arsenal supporters, which I think
as it should be.
Which is good, and I think it's a positive thing. Whilst I often feel like Arsenal are really always seen as like the worst defenders when they do these price of football things, even though they ignore the fact that with the Arsenal season ticket, you get 7 extra games than a lot of the other ones. Even though I do feel we're victimised in that sense. We're all behind that, aren't we? That we should be 60, 70 quid a ticket seems excessive.
Yeah, you need to make the game more accessible.
Yeah.
And, not to go off on a tangent, but that's one thing that I've never really understood about English football in general. Over here, the NFL, they've got on their website live replays and highlights as the games are going on. Mm-hmm. They just make it so much more accessible to the fans. The NHL, you can find all their stuff on YouTube. The Bundesliga does the same thing.
And even the NBC over there, you got every Premier League game, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, we can watch every game, but then when we go online and try to find things, the FA is taking everything down off of YouTube. Highlights are being hidden. You can't watch replays of matches until like the Tuesday after or whatever it is, and they just make the game more difficult for the average fan. And I just don't understand the thought process behind that in general.
It's money.
More fans, the better. Well, yeah, but at the same time, you got a couple big fat cats giving you money, giving you a lot of money,
the issue
or
is, though,
you've got
is
a lot of little fish giving you little money. It
true.
balances out.
Well, there's a big debate about all sorts of, whether it's films or football or whatever, about the industries having to change to adapt to modern times, to the internet and all this stuff. But, obviously they get the big money. These companies pay huge amounts of money to have.
Right, and I'm sure a lot of it comes from the TV rights. They get the huge contract from, who was it, Sky and NBC over here. So they want to have that exclusive content to give to their customers.
Be aggressive in taking down. But
right, no, I mean, I understand that. But
with ticket prices as well, I mean, where Arsenal are in London, they can charge whatever they want, and it doesn't matter if
people will turn up.
Throw the tickets in, you'll just fill it with tourists who want to go for a game, or a lot of people who just want to who will pay the money. So it's we could have a whole separate podcast on this, but
well, and another thing, I know that the Bundesliga is a lot more governed by their FA or whatever it is, because I know that every club over there has to operate in the black. I don't know how much that comes into the FA comes into controlling their ticket prices.
Well, they have different. The whole culture is very different. I don't think they're all fan owned, aren't they? The stadium, the teams. Sorry,
I don't know if they all are, but
I don't think. Well, there's not any rich owners really. I think you obviously got Spurs who are backed by.
Well, every club's got to be running the black, so those rich owners don't want to go there because they can't just dump a bunch of money in and buy players.
Which
is great for their league.
But no, I always think German football. I watch the Bundesliga quite a lot. It's there's a lot to be admired about it. And there's good standards. A lot of goals in the games I find when I watch the highlights, and the stadiums are always rocking. So there's definitely lessons to be learned, and I think it was good that the Arsenal fans gave their support to the Bayern fans who were making a very important point, I think. So, good for them. So, anyway, Everton at the weekend, home game. They lost 3-0 to United at the weekend. I think it goes without saying this is a game we've got to be trying to win, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to see another 3-0.
I think we all would, mate. I think even a 2-0 I'll take after the Bayern
I'll take a 1-0. I don't care. I'll take 3 points.
A scrappy win off Giroud's arse. I don't care.
Yeah. But I think that this is a game that we're capable of winning comfortably.
What changes would you make? I mean, obviously Ramsey's going to be out. Would you bring in? The issue is basically. Well, the main question is: do you bring Oxlade-Chamberlain straight swap, or do you bring Giroud in and move Walcott out to the right if Ramsey's out?
That's a tough one. I mean, I wasn't terribly impressed with Oxlade after he came on, but he wasn't on that long last night anyway.
He needs to run the games. I think he just.
If you're doing like for like, he'd be the choice though, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and also I find, whilst I want to see Giroud in the team, I'm also kind of sceptical to take Theo out of that striking position because he hasn't been so good. It'd be quite, and also I want to see Ox get more minutes, but also because I think Theo needs more time to learn. He just needs to keep playing.
Well, and Ox needs a good run of matches to get some form too.
But then after Giroud's form, you kind of feel guilty leaving him out, don't you? It's tough. I guess it's good that even with the injuries, we're still debating over a couple of options, which is nice, I guess. And good friend Joel Campbell's still knocking about. He might get a subs appearance.
Yeah, if we didn't loan him out again?
I think he's still hanging on. But anyway.
That's a shame. I thought he had a great World Cup, and I was hoping for big things from him
I think we were, but the standard we've got at the club, especially in those attacking positions, is so high that if he doesn't come in and make immediate impacts, he's going to struggle. But anyway, that's again another debate we could have. But we'll probably see more of him with Ramsey out. So Gabriel.
Prediction time.
Well, first of all, would you bring Gabriel in, or would you stick with Mertesacker Kashani?
Assuming that the fitness is all there and that neither of them are fatigued.
Well, Gabriel was ill actually, wasn't he? Of course, I forgot that he was off. Wasn't even on the bench. Yeah,
I would say I would keep Mertesacker and Kashani after that. I mean, it's a big assumption that they're not fatigued after 2 games. Or is it? When was Gabriel out?
I think he was just ill for the week.
This weekend.
He might be okay.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't change anything right now.
Mm-hmm. We've got Sheffield Wednesday in the cup next week, so we can rest people there.
Rest people then. Yep. Exactly.
Which is good. So prediction.
3-1 to the Arsenal.
No clean sheet for Cech this week.
No, I think he's gonna have pity on his opponents this weekend and allow one. No, I think that I don't know. It's just every once in a while, just one trickles in. It seems.
It happens, doesn't it?
That's the only reason I'm saying that. I don't think that there's any reason to suspect that Cech will allow one. It's just I think that we're due to concede at least once.
Mm-hmm. No, I would probably agree with that. I would probably go for a 2-1 though. I think it'd be a bit tighter than that. Actually, it's funny. I actually went to the Arsenal Everton game 2 seasons ago at the Emirates, and do you remember when it was 1-1? Do you remember when Özil scored and then Deulofeu got a late equaliser, and then Giroud hit that half volley from about 30 yards that hit the crossbar in the last minute? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
This to this day still remains one of the most heartbreaking things. So I went to the game and I was right behind the goal, and we'd obviously gone 1-0 up, thought brilliant, they'd equalised, and I thought shit. And then Giroud has that absolute ridiculous shot from that angle and hits the bar, and you just think, oh god, I'm happy you could have made me, Giroud.
Yeah, just
if it had been an inch lower, but let's hope that he knocks one in this weekend and we get 3 points. So anyway, thanks for joining me, Judd. That was a bit of a low key one, but it was a great win, and we had to do something, didn't we? We couldn't go a week without talking about this game. So hopefully we'll have another win to celebrate against Bayern in a couple of weeks. But even if we don't, we'll treasure this one. That'd be good.
3 on the trot against those clowns from Germany, huh?
Did we win the last one?
Yeah,
I thought we drew. No, we drew in Munich after they beat us. And it was the year before that we beat them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm getting my years backwards.
So yeah, but no, it's always good to beat them, isn't it? After especially when even if they beat us in the second leg, it's not like knockout football and we go out with still beating them. So yeah, no, great result. Good feel good atmosphere, isn't it, at the moment? And let's hope that continues through to Everton at the weekend. So yeah, thanks again, Judd. And I've been Callum. You can follow us on Twitter, which is at Gooner Ramble Pod. And on the GoonerRamble.com we have blogs and all the latest podcast episodes. So yes, thank you very much and good night.
Night.